We used to create some like original piece of content. We would create it for one channel, for one audience, and then we would distribute it that way. Now we can create one piece of original content and we can use AI to take our thoughts, our original content, and figure out how to repurpose that and retarget a different audience on a different channel. And it can even help us like schedule and distribute that content.
Are you using AI in your content creation or just life in general? This is the topic of conversation in today's episode. I am so excited. We got into all things AI with my friend Brian Piper. He is an author and award winning international keynote speaker and a consultant. He has been optimizing digital content since 1996. So he's been doing this for a really long time. He's also the host of the AI for You podcast. He and I have known each other for many years back when I was in the content marketing space with my marketing company. And it was so fun to reconnect with him and talk all things AI. So if you are using AI or you are just getting into it, you are going to love this conversation. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I am so excited because we haven't actually spoken in quite some time.
Right?
We met years and years ago in the content marketing space, probably content marketing world, but we've kind of stayed connected as people do on social media. The only
That's right. Of course. That's the way we do it these days.
That's right. I've just been following your career and you've been doing some interesting things and you are a writer, you are an author, you're a creative, you do lots of stuff. You write this newsletter now for a few years and you talk a lot about AI. And this topic is very big, very interesting in all different areas. But I thought it would be fun to have this conversation around AI and creativity, especially because some people are like, no, writers aren't going to be able to write books and poetry and plays and scripts and all this stuff. And so some are very hesitant about it. And some are like, it's the best writing partner I've ever had. So I thought it would be fun to dig into this. So let's start with a little bit about your career and what got you so interested in AI and making this your full-time thing. As we're talking, this is your last day at your job and
Right.
you're doing this full time now, which is very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if we go back a little ways, I graduated college with a major in creative writing and a minor in philosophy. So ready to wait tables, for not. And very shortly after that, I discovered that it's really hard to make a living writing magazine articles around your hobbies that you're interested in. So I decided I needed to get a job. And so I ended up like falling into a job as a, I don't know, website developer, even though I didn't really have any development skills, but I had writing skills and they needed that. And I worked with some really talented developers and they like helped me out a lot, but most of the time they would just stick me over on the content side. Someone would bring their content to us for a website and they'd say, make this show up on, the search engines. So then I really started getting into kind of the technical aspect, the data aspect, and kind of the back end programming, and just always saw technology as a solution to help amplify your writing, whether that was getting more people to discover it or making it easier for us to create it. I mean, the transition from the quill pen to the computer has really increased our capability to create and distribute our content. And I see AI as just like the next logical progression of that. Did that for years, got into creating courses for companies, switched different job roles, worked at an ad agency for a while, doing their website programs. And then in 2016 or 2014, I read the first edition of Epic Content Marketing from Joe Polizzi and thought, oh my gosh, you can sell things to people just by putting out content and helping them and just putting your knowledge out there and sharing it and getting them to know, like, and trust you. And then they'll connect with you and be interested in your services and products. So switched full time into marketing, really got into the data analytics side of things at that point and was always thinking, so much of data analysis is it's like drudgery. It's like going through so much data and so much information. And I'm like, there's got to be a way to automate this. There's got to be a way to make this go faster. And so then in 2022, when I started hearing about Dolly and Midjourney and these tools that you could just tell them what kind of images you wanted to create and they would just create them for you. I started digging into those and playing with those. And then as soon as ChatGPT came out, I was like, this is it. I'm all in. I can work with this tool. I can collaborate with this. It can help me, target different audiences, expand my content base, do my research faster. And just being along that journey and watching how these tools have progressed and new tools have come along and the capabilities are just constantly improving, making the act of creating so much easier. And you still need the human for the storytelling, the emotion, the judging whether or not the quality of something is better or worse. But these AI tools can help so much with scaling, with targeting, with gap analysis, with looking at your data to make sure that you're actually creating the right content for the right audience, and giving you variations. You can write, and this is exactly what we used to do in writing classes. We would do our first draft, we would bring it in, everybody would read it, we'd talk about it, we'd get ideas, and now you can do that with AI. You don't need to go to a college class to do that, and it can give you different perspectives. So, yeah, it is absolutely the best collaborator I've ever had, and it has scaled up my production and quality exponentially.
Ah, that's so cool, and I did not realize that you graduated with creative writing and philosophy. That is so
Very
interesting.
useful degrees.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. So do you enjoy so for you, you work with a lot of people that are coming to you to discover how they can use AI in their work, in their creative work. What are some of the what are some of the commonalities that you're seeing that people what are they coming to you for? What tools are you sharing with them to help make their work better?
Yeah, I mean, most people come and are wanting to figure out ways to be more efficient. And efficiency is great. I love being able to, make your processes faster. But I think the real power of AI is that it's change management. It gives you the ability to do your work differently. So instead of just, you know, taking your email writing process and figuring out how you can automate those first drafts so that you can just look through them and review them instead of having to write them all yourself and face that blank page syndrome that can shock so much of us, so many of us. So I think a lot of people initially are just like, how can we do what we're doing faster? We have to be more efficient. We have to reach a broader audience. But really, once we start working together, we start coming up with ways they can entirely change the work that they're doing, their processes, in a way that makes it a much more collaborative workforce, in partnership with the AI tools. And, when I'm like, so I've written 2 books and both before, AI, one before ChatGPT, and then the other one was after ChatGPT had come out and Claude had come out, and we'd started using those tools a little bit, and so I played with using them for the book, but I really enjoy the writing process. I think that's, very cathartic. I get myself invested into the work. So I don't use it to actually create like the copy. I'll help it. I'll use it for research and for outlines and for idea generation and for creating, comparisons and researching case studies. But then I will write the first draft and then we will work together to figure out how we can make that better, how we can make sure that it's focused on the right audience. And then if it's digital content, once you start distributing that, there's so many ways you can monitor and manage that to improve it, to make it more effective, to make sure that you're, repurposing and retargeting, redistributing that in as many ways as possible with as little input as necessary.
What do you find like a big difference between like a ChatGPT or a Claude or like what do you use? What do you recommend?
Yeah, and so yes, for sure. And usually when I'm starting with people, I will start with ChatGPT because it's kind of a all-in-one tool. It can do so many things pretty well. And it has like I love custom GPTs. I don't know if you've used custom GPTs much, but they're like mini models that you can train within ChatGPT very easily to handle specific tasks, specific problems, and then you can share them. So when I go in to talk with businesses, I'll create some custom GPTs specialized to them that are like, will write in their brand voice or will, accomplish certain things that they need to do in their workflows. And once you start introducing those to them, it's very easy for them to very quickly see the value that these tools bring. But then, like, I use Claude for more of the long form writing, for coding. I'll use ChatGPT for data analysis. I'll use Gemini for being able to upload large amounts of information, or Notebook LM to be able to put lots of different sources in there and get it to create different perspectives on all of that different information. But the problem is these tools are changing so quick, and every time you turn around, there's a new model out. So then some of the tools like now ChatGPT 4.5 writes really well. So you've got to kind of constantly be testing and playing and realizing that the tool you're using today may not be the tool that you're going to use next week to do the same thing. So,
Mm. Yeah, I haven't played around with the custom ones yet, but I know that's is that more like if you create a custom GPT, then it's like specific to like if this custom one I was gonna work on with just emails or podcast descriptions so that it just then kinda can go back. Is that basically what it is?
yep. So basically, anytime that I keep going back to a prompt, I'm like, oh, where's that prompt that I did for writing email or for meal planning? If I keep going back to a prompt, I'm like, this is something that I need to create a custom GPT out of. And they are super easy to create. You can just say, create one, and you just tell it, this is what I want you to do. For my meal planner, which is like my most used custom GPT, I use it 3 or 4 times a week, and it saves me hours of time every month trying to figure out what to cook, and it gives me my shopping list in the order that I shop at my grocery store. It will pull all the recipe ingredients together. It'll give me the preparation schedule so I know, like, exactly what I've gotta get done on the weekend so that during the week, it's half an hour to get dinner on the table. It's a game changer, and I tell people all the time, if you start using these for your personal life, it's gonna make it easier for you to integrate it into your work life, and it's gonna save you tons of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw someone who they used ChatGPT to they wanted to cook something, but they didn't know what they could cook, and they didn't feel like going to the grocery store, so they just put in there, these are all the ingredients that I have in my refrigerator, in my pantry. What give me a recipe that I can make, and I thought that was so clever.
Right? And now you can just take a picture in ChatGPT of what's in your refrigerator, and it will figure
Oh,
out what is there and give you recipes for what you have on hand.
wow.
Yeah,
That is so crazy.
it is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So let's talk about books because I appreciate that you said you enjoy the writing process. I did too. In fact, I was very happy that my book came out prior to ChatGPT because I think I probably would have. I would have been very hesitant to publish it. I feel like I would want to run it through. And because I use it a lot for creating emails, creating landing pages. But I always write it. I always will write it because I just like the process of getting better. And what I found is I almost use it as a writing coach. So when I wrote my book, I hired a writing coach because I was like, I want to be a good writer. So I hired a coach to help me. But I really find that ChatGPT is pretty good writer because I ask it specifically, act as my editor and I specifically will say, like, what is missing? Are there pieces that don't flow? Just kind of some of the language that I used that I learned from my writing coach, I'm able to put in there so that they knew what I was looking for. And so it would give me like, and then I would say, give me a score on a scale of 1 to 10 and where are the holes? And surprisingly, very helpful.
Right? Yeah, and it's incredible once you start, like, training these tools and they get to know you a little bit, it can really provide some valuable insights and information and perspective. It's just we get so caught up and so focused on what we're creating and what we've written, and we have ownership over that. I have a little ego about what I write,
Yep.
and so it'll give me advice, and if I don't like the advice, I can just say, "No, I'm not gonna do that." But a writing coach, you have to be like, "Well, all right, maybe I'll do that, because you told me I should do it. I know you're gonna read this again." But with AI, you can take it or leave it. But I've found some incredible advice and perspectives using AI to help me manage my writing. And I do it all the time with my newsletter. I'll write the newsletter, I'll put it in AI, and I've got a custom GPT trained just on all the previous editions of my newsletter. So it's using the way I write, the stories I tell, all of that information to say, here are some takeaways that you missed, or here are some connections that you didn't see because you're too close to the work.
Yeah. Yeah, and so to people that are thinking or that might be listening and saying, "Well, that's not your work then. If you're putting it in and you're like, then it's not your work." I feel like that's a big conversation people have. So, what is your take? Like, how would you respond to that?
The way I create and the way that I have learned to be a better writer is by getting input from other people and by getting inspiration from other work, other books that I've read, other content that I see. I watch to see what's working and what's not. I see how people read and consume. I listen to the comments about people that have read my books and what they like and what they don't like. So I'm using all of that every time I create. Adding AI is just like another resource that you can use that's been trained on all these other books, on all this other content. Now, I absolutely agree. I'm not a fan of the fact that my books have been, taken in and used to train these models, which okay, I get it. They need to get their data and their information from somewhere, and I would rather have a full, complete data set that I can use and leverage. It'd be nice if they gave me credit at least. I don't even care if they buy a copy of the book or not, but, at least being able to cite the fact that my work was used to help create this output would be nice. But if the choice is either that or not having that companion, that collaborator that I can have on demand at 2 in the morning when I'm finishing a chapter or putting my last polish on my newsletter, I'll take the AI and take that collaborator every time because it's just so helpful. And we used to, when we would create some like original piece of content, we would create it for one channel, for one audience, and then we would distribute it that way. Now we can create one piece of original content and we can use AI to take our thoughts, our original content, and figure out how to repurpose that and retarget a different audience on a different channel. And it can even help us like schedule and distribute that content. So now we're able to reach a much broader audience and we're able to have a much greater impact on all of those different audiences. And this is the same thing that we see with SEO, because I'll go in and do an SEO workshop, and I work with a lot of higher ed institutions. So I'll go into some like very prestigious higher ed institutions, and the writers there are very protective of their work, which I understand. They're like, no, the story is perfect. We crafted it just right. And I'm like, well, if you change these 5 words, you might reach 10,000 more people every month just because it's optimized for exactly what people are searching on. And some people just don't wanna do that, and I understand that's their choice, but I wanna do that. I wanna reach more people. I want my content to have a bigger impact. I'm fine with changing it and adjusting it. When my editor comes back with changes, I'm like, "All right, you're right. That's a good change. I'll go with that." When AI comes back with good changes, I feel the same way.
It's funny you say that because I remember when I would get notes back from my writing coach, and I would be so upset. I would be so upset.
Of course.
I remember I would sometimes cry. I'm like, "Oh my god," like, "She doesn't get it." Like, she does
Of soul into this.
yes. I'm like, "Everything." And I would be so upset, and she had to teach me or coach me. She had to coach me, "You need to sleep on it. This is your book. You can do whatever you want. Like, I'm here to make it good. So you can sleep on it and then let me know. Give it a day or 2." And I did. And 95% of the time, I was like, "Okay, I get it. She's right. It needs some work."
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and
Oh
even,
my
like,
gosh.
even in the creative process, like, sometimes if I'm having, like, a little writer's block, I will just go stream of consciousness and just word dump onto the page, and then you can take all of that instead of having to go back through and reread it and figure out what goes where, you can just throw that in AI and say, organize this in a, a cohesive manner that makes sense to this audience or about this topic. And it can just take all of that stuff and rearrange it for you. So it's much easier for you to go in when you're working on that second draft and be like, oh, yeah, now I can add more connections. I can add more of my stories, more of my personality into this piece because now it's all organized and arranged and I don't have to worry about doing that part.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit. You've been in the content space for a long time. I'm curious because I think AI is making it easier than ever to produce a ton of content, right? To your point, if somebody has a newsletter, whereas I used to write a weekly newsletter, it's a lot. Like it's a lot to sit down and write a newsletter. And I didn't have ChatGPT, but now that you're mentioning it, I'm like, maybe I should get back to doing my newsletter because I have ideas every week. It's very, as an author, it takes a lot to get down your ideas on paper, then to kind of let it go for a bit, then come back and then make sure that it sounds right and you're saying what you're intending to say, and so it definitely is a lot of work for a weekly project. So you can create a lot of work, but I just often wonder for creatives, especially if it's not what you do for a living, right? Like I don't do this for a living. Like a lot of this stuff I do for the fun of it. A lot of my listeners like do it for the joy of it. And where like how do you decide what to focus on? And okay, I have a lot. I'm just gonna just say all these things and then you answer how you want. Cause I feel like how do you decide what platform to use, like what messages to share? And then if it's how do you know if if you're making progress on your work and if it's any good, especially because there's so much content out there for people to find. It is challenging for people to find our work. So for those people that are like, "Well, I've been creating for years and I still have this very small group of people." Like, is it the work? Is it SEO? How do you decide what actually is good work and if people are making progress?
Yeah. And good questions, all of them.
I know
And
there's a lot of them in one. I apologize. I should
no,
have
no, no, all good. I'll try
I should
to
use
answer them.
ChatGPT to structure it
Right?
differently.
Organize nice together. Organize them. So first of all, these tools can do a lot of things, but it's up to us to decide what they should do. So there are things in the writing process that I love. There are things in the writing process that other people love, or I shouldn't say writing, I should say creating, right? Whatever process it is, however you're creating. So if there are things that you love, do those things. If there are things that you don't like, have AI help with those things. Like my wife is an organizer. She loves organizing things. So the idea of just dumping my stream of consciousness ideas into an AI and having it do the organization for me, she would never do that. But, the act of getting the words on the page, she would probably record them and then have them like transcribed or something like that. So it's very personal, like how you're going to use these tools or what you're going to replace in your processes. And then as far as whether or not it's actually having an impact, that gets into the data side of things, which is where I live most of my time. And the most important thing for your business, if you're doing something creative as a part of your income, you have to look at what actually causes your audience to choose your products, choose your services, purchase your whatevers. That's where you need to focus. That's where you need to put your energy. If you are creative, if you're a painter and you paint all sorts of different pictures, but people are only buying your landscapes and you want to make a living doing that, you better be painting more landscapes. So you have to start figuring out what is actually moving the needle, what is actually creating revenue. So a lot of times when I am creating content, I will go and look at, yes, this content is driving a lot of traffic. That's great. More eyeballs on my content, more people are knowing me, more people signing up. But what I really want is I want people converting into customers. I want to do more consulting. I want people to bring me in to talk to them and speak with them. So that's what I need to do. I need to look for what content is creating revenue. And that's the content that I need to be spending my time on. And AI is so great at looking at all of your analytics and looking at the content you're creating and saying, this type of content, stories about this, information about this particular topic, are what is converting into revenue. And then maybe the next month you want to like increase your newsletter subscribers. Well, what content is causing your subscriptions to increase? What platforms or channels are working the best for you? So I used to tell people all the time, you can't improve the performance of your content if you're not looking at your data. And I don't tell people that anymore. Now I tell people that you can't improve the performance of your content if you're not letting AI look at your data, because it does a much better job of looking at large amounts of data and pulling out those insights. And you can just tell it that, these are my audiences, these are my business goals, here's the content, here's my data, what's working, what's not, what should I be doing more of? And then when it comes to deciding what platform, so a lot of times I'll have 4 browser windows open with 4 different large language models. I'll put the same prompt in all of them, and I'll pick and choose what I like. And then sometimes I'll even take the output from one model and put it into a different model and say, what's missing, what's good, what's bad, and work them against each other, because you're gonna come up with, I mean, these models are all trained differently with different data, with different capabilities. And so sometimes I like the final output from Claude more, and sometimes I like the final output from ChatGPT more.
I use Descript to edit the podcast, which, by the way, has made it so much easier.
Such a great tool,
Oh
right?
my gosh, it's crazy because I remember, well, I took a little hiatus from this podcast, and I did it, and then I stopped doing it because I was writing the book and I launched the other podcast, and, life. So I needed to I was gonna take a couple months off. I took a year off, whatever.
Nice.
So, but I'm back at it, obviously. So, but what I edit this podcast. Like, I edit the podcast, I do all this stuff for it, and when I found Descript, I was like, "Oh my gosh, it does so many things that took me hours to do before, and I love it, and just it's so easy. Like, it's so easy to use." But to your point about the using the different platforms, I will have Descript help me create the show notes, but I don't love them. But I take the show notes, and then I also just add my own little flair to it, and then I put that into ChatGPT, and from that, I'm able to edit one that I love.
Right? Yep.
So, that I did find I was like, "Oh, Descript, no, I'm not a fan of your notes," but I always have them do it because it helps the process.
Get you started, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Because if
my
you had to
god.
write those from scratch every time, oh, it's
Well, that's
so
what I
much
used to
time.
do. I
Yep.
used to do all that. Listen, Brian, some people are living life, no, they're starting with these tools, right? We didn't have all this stuff when social media started. Like, it was like it was all new. And so some people, it's wild to think that they don't even know a life of not sharing their life online or being on TikTok, or it's so crazy to think.
Yeah, for sure. And like even so I've got my wife and I have 6 kids between the 2 of us. We got 4 in college
That's
right now.
insane.
So my daughter calls me the other day and she's like, I've got this big research paper to do. I've got all this stuff that I got to spend all day in online doing all this research. And I was like, do you have like ChatGPT? Because the deep research in that will do like hours, days of research for you. And she tried it once and like half an hour later, she called me back and she's like, oh my gosh, I've got all the research done. I also told her to go on Gemini. So she had 2 different deep research reports that she was going through and figuring out. It's got everything in there. It's got all the sources. It's got all the citations that I can go check. She's like, this would have taken me days to do all this. I'm like, you have that at your fingertips. We used to have to go, like, get the encyclopedias at the library or in the basement on microfiche, I mean, what? Yeah, people don't even know what that is anymore.
No, they don't. Well, you know what's funny? A few months ago, I went to this event and they showed, and the guy was in one of the presentations, they were talking about AI, and the guy was showing this video clip of when Katie Couric was on the Today Show. So, like, and Brian, they were talking about email. What's this email thing? Like, what's this internet thing? And it's a clip of Katie Couric saying, "Oh, I don't want the internet. I already have too much in my brain. I'm already information overload." That was before the internet. Can you imagine? And now we have everything. Remember the days when someone would say, "Oh, how old is Rob Thomas from Matchbox 20?" I don't know. And
Just
we
make it
just
up.
will and we're just cool with not knowing. Not anymore.
Oh, you can find out at the drop of a hat now. Well,
Oh,
and you mentioned a little bit about how you get your content found because that is changing so dramatically. The way people search is changing. I mean, kids especially are searching in communities like Reddit and online in like chat and voice search and social. So they have all these different places to go and find content. And right now, there are people out there are creators out there making all the content for all those different platforms. But I think in a couple of years, this is all gonna be like content on demand. People are just gonna like ask for a video that shows them how to do something, and it's not gonna go out and find somebody's video on YouTube. It's gonna dynamically generate video that's personalized for them, for the situation that they're in based on you know, the tire they wanna change on their car. They'll be able to look through their glasses or pull their phone out or whatever, and it's gonna say, "Oh, well, here, I made a custom video for you about your favorite avatar showing you step by step how to change a tire and helping you along the process." So, what's that going to do to all of us who are creating content now? So, I keep telling people now is the time to lean into content creation and building communities and connecting with people on a human level because soon this content landscape that we have is going to look very different and it's going to be much more troublesome to figure out how to insert yourself into other people's lives in a way that they can find you.
oh my gosh. So for someone that just started something, they just started a podcast or they just started a YouTube channel or they're thinking about writing a book and they're feeling a little like, ugh, should I even do it? Like, is it even worth it now? I just feel like we just live in this world of everyone. I mean, this is not new. People have said this for years. Like, it's already been said. Look, there's no new ideas, right? Like books that are written, they're amazing, incredible books, but they're saying something that has been said before and they're saying it in their own unique way. So for someone that's like either thinking about launching something or they just launched something like a podcast, let's say, what advice would you give to them?
I would say lean into what makes you uniquely you. Lean into your experiences, your stories, your background, because Jay Akonzo is one of my favorite speakers and creators. And he says all the time, you don't have to be the best, you just have to be their favorite. So there are people that are way better at all the things that I do, but the way that I communicate with people, the way I present information, it just clicks with some people. So my goal, my job is to go out and find those people that I can help, that I connect with, who are interested in the things that I have to say and keep putting out information that they like because I want to build my audience, I want to build my network, I want to build a group of people who are like, "Oh, I wanna think about how to do this with AI." Brian's the person I gotta go reach out to. I gotta talk to him. I gotta get his courses, his books, whatever information I can get, whatever knowledge I can get from him, because those are the people that are gonna get you into speaking events. Those are the people who are gonna go buy your products and services, and even sometimes people will, like, book a workshop with you even if they don't really need all that information just because they wanna support you. They wanna pay back some of the information and knowledge you've given. So, I would say lean into your humanity because everything else is going to be able to be automated very soon.
So let's give people a few, some people have really leaned into it, some people have not tried it. And let's talk about some of the things that like let's get let people if someone is just getting into ChatGPT, like I only use ChatGPT for the most part. Well, I use Descript for editing stuff, but that's really the platform that I go to for just to help with some idea creation. Sometimes I'll just ask it even around, oh, I want to create a video and I kind of talk about what like the essence of the video I want and just to kind of give me some titles. I love I love having it help me create titles for the podcast as well, because titles is like same thing as subject lines, right? It's like they're so important, and that is something that I do love to collaborate on. And so, what are some interesting creatives that how have you helped some creatives use ChatGPT in a way that somebody listening can get started? Like right now, if they were going to get onto ChatGPT and try this.
Yeah, and I think the idea of thinking of it as a collaborator, as a partner is a great place to start. And you don't have to get, there's prompt engineering and all sorts of different ways to get very technical with your prompts. A lot of times I'll just go in and be like, okay, ChatGPT, here's the problem that I'm dealing with. Here's what I'm trying to solve for. What are some ideas about ways that I should do that? And it'll just come back. It'll ask you questions. That's one of the things I put in almost every prompt. I was like, ask me any questions that will give you more information to help you create a better output. And so much of the time, it'll ask me all sorts of questions. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a great idea. And when I'm this is another huge unlock is the advanced voice feature. So I still am a huge podcast listener, but I used to spend all my time when I was driving listening to podcasts. Now when I drive, I will talk with ChatGPT and get so much work done. So I needed to when I was writing my book, when I was done, I needed to come up with a testimonial about my experience with the publishing company. So I just brain dumped into the voice search while I was driving or into the voice mode while I was driving and just said, here's all the things that went well and just went through the whole process. And then I said, okay, now I want you to interview me and ask me questions that might be relevant to a new author who's looking for a publishing company. So then it asked me questions. I answered those. We had a back and forth about that. And then at the end, I said, okay, now put this all together in a document. Only use the words that I said but organize them and put them into a testimonial. So then by the time I got home, I could just go and download this Word document that had my whole testimonial all written up. And I just went through and checked it and massaged some of it and rewrote it. But it was all my words. It was all information that I had given, but it was now organized and laid out and put together and thoughts that I didn't have when I was just brain dumping. So just really think of these tools as collaborators, as partners, because that's what they are and that's how they function best.
Yeah. I have a friend who is going through a really difficult time in his life, and he went to ChatGPT and he started talking to it like, this is how I'm feeling and this is what's going on. And he actually asked it, I really want to get better. I want to feel better and I want to lose weight and I want to stop just some of the habits that he had. And so it said, can you please create a schedule for me, like a weekly schedule to help me. Anyway, it creates this whole, it was like a chart and Excel spreadsheet, everything, gave him all the things to do. And it was so funny, Brian, because he says to me, so I have this whole thing, and he goes, and I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it is this things that you've been telling me that I should do. It
Right?
was like journaling and like working out and get anyway, so it made me laugh because I was like, well, you know what? If you don't listen to a friend, at least you're listening to some robot on the internet telling you. But it really kickstarted so much of he really has been able to transform his life in the course of a year. And that was something that really kickstarted it. So I thought that was a really interesting way to use it. I love the idea of a collaborator as well as a coach. We've talked a little bit about writing coach. I am really curious about poetry and wanting to get better at poetry. So I will share a poem, like, I'll take someone's poem and I will put it into ChatGPT and say, "What makes for a good poem? Like, why is this a good poem?" And describe like, just using it as a tool to help me understand, how do you write better poetry? How do you become a better writer? What are the things to look for?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And having it break down the fundamentals of whatever area you're trying to improve, it's a huge help. When I need to learn something about AI, I ask AI. I'm like, here's what I'm trying to do. How do I do it? And it'll tell me.
That's so funny. I know I asked it the other day. I said, "Do you know the podcast Create for No Reason?" And it wrote back and he said, "Oh yeah, of course. And it's about da 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 da." And then he goes, and then it even said, because it's funny, like it's like humorous. Like it says, "By the way, I know it's your podcast. Like I know it's you."
Right? Yeah. It's great when it starts like when the memory starts remembering things that we tell it because that gives you better outputs. This is perfectly relevant to me. That's what I want.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel obviously we can go on and on about ChatGPT, AI, and all the things, but I do feel like it's interesting to talk to people that are more in this space that is really that uses it all the time and you're teaching people how to use it. I feel like for creators that are listening, it's a hopeful place, a collaboration of sorts that people can use to create better work because that's what everyone that's listening is here to do is creating good work and sharing it with the world and getting better at whatever craft they are working towards.
Absolutely. And
I
if there are tools that can help with that, why not use them?
Why not use them? I've and that's the thing, other people are using them, so, your competitors, if it's a business thing, they're using it, and so they're gonna be able to do things, and half the times I always ask my guests at the end, "What is one activity," even though we've given lots, but what is one activity that the listener can do in 10 minutes or less to live a more creative life?
I would say lean into your personal experiences and your human side more. I know that was one thing that I was always hesitant to do to incorporate more personal things into my writing. I think that sense of vulnerability and exposure brings people to you more. They want to connect with you more because they understand you better. And we're all trying to put ourselves into our work, and sometimes we just have to be a little more exposed or intentional about it. And start experimenting with these tools, start playing and just trying things out because you're going to learn so much and they're changing so fast.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brian, we'll have to have you come back on in like another year when everything is different and changed and new. But you'll be like a whole year into your new career as on your own, doing consulting and workshops and just teaching people how to leverage all this stuff. So I'm very excited for you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for all the great content that you're putting out there in the world, helping a lot of people.
You're so awesome. Thank you. Okay, so what do you think? How are you using AI? I absolutely love hearing how creative people are using AI to create better content, to make their lives easier. How are you using it? And if you haven't yet explored AI or using ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these tools, are you excited? Are you inspired to maybe take that leap, to take that next step? I hope that this conversation inspired you in some way to start using these tools as a collaborator. I love that Brian kept coming back to that word. It really does feel like a collaboration. And that's the way that I use it normally. It really does feel like I'm going to it almost as sometimes as a coach to coach me to be a better writer, to help me think about things differently, to poke holes in my ideas or initial way of thinking about something. How are you going to use it? How are you using it? I would love to hear. So if you are using it, if you have a really cool way that you've used ChatGPT or one of these other tools, please share them in the comments. I would love to hear. I know lots of people love to hear how other people are using it. So let us know. And again, hope that this episode inspired you in some way to help you move your creative projects forward. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, go create something.